In 1945, in the arid cliffs near Nag Hammadi, Egypt, a local farmer stumbled upon a buried jar sealed for centuries. Inside were a series of papyrus manuscripts written in Coptic, later known as the Nag Hammadi Library. Among these texts was the Gospel of Thomas, a document that scholars now call the Fifth Gospel because it presents sayings of Jesus outside the canonical Gospels. Imagine for a moment holding words that may capture Jesus' original teachings, words hidden for nearly 1,600 years in the desert. The discovery immediately challenged scholars' understanding of early Christianity. For centuries, the Church had decided which texts would shape the official story of Jesus' life, death, and message. But Thomas had survived in secret, untouched by the hands of Orthodoxy. The Gospel of Thomas is unlike anything in the New Testament. It does not narrate events or miracles. Instead, it presents 114 individual sayings. Some echo familiar words from Matthew or Luke, while others are puzzling, philosophical, or cryptic. The structure itself forces reflection. The reader must engage directly with the content, interpreting its meaning, rather than following a narrative. Professor James Dunn explains, Thomas preserves sayings that are strikingly similar to canonical material, yet they appear independently and in a different order, suggesting an alternative tradition of Jesus' teachings. Professor Paula Fredriksen adds, the text illustrates the diversity of thought among early Christian communities. It challenges the notion of a uniform understanding of Jesus' message before orthodoxy was established. For you, the viewer, this discovery is not just about ancient papyrus. It is a window into a world where theological debates were alive, where communities interpreted Jesus' teachings differently, and where some voices were preserved only in secret. The implications are staggering. What if these sayings reveal a dimension of Jesus' teachings that has been hidden for centuries? Archaeologists, linguists, and historians have spent decades studying these manuscripts. Analysis of language, style, and thematic content suggests that many sayings may predate the canonical Gospels. Some passages emphasize self-knowledge, spiritual insight, and personal responsibility in ways that make Thomas both illuminating and unsettling. This chapter sets the stage for our exploration. We will dive deeper into Thomas's sayings, understand what makes them unique, and examine the historical and archaeological context that preserve them. As we move forward, consider, how might your understanding of Jesus' teachings expand when reading words that were once buried and hidden from view? Unlike the canonical Gospels, the Gospel of Thomas does not tell a narrative of Jesus' life. It presents 114 individual sayings, each a brief, self-contained insight. Some of these sayings echo words found in Matthew or Luke, while others are enigmatic, philosophical, or entirely unfamiliar. The text challenges the reader to engage actively, contemplating each saying on its own terms. Some passages emphasize self-discovery and inner enlightenment. For example, if you bring forth what is within you, what you have will save you. If you do not have that within you, what you do not have within you will destroy you. Another reads, the kingdom of God is inside you, and it is outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that you are children of the living Father. These statements focus on personal insight rather than narrative, encouraging reflection and active spiritual engagement. The text style is strikingly different from the canonical Gospels. There are no miracles, no birth story, no crucifixion narrative. Instead, it is a collection of teachings designed to provoke thought and self-awareness. Its meditative, almost cryptic structure may have made early authorities wary, as it encourages personal interpretation over conformity. Professor James Dunn explains, Thomas presents a Jesus whose teachings are intended to provoke independent thought and spiritual discovery. The text was likely perceived as a challenge to the emerging Orthodox authority because it emphasized personal insight over prescribed ritual. Some sayings carry a distinctly Gnostic tone, highlighting knowledge, Gnosis, over simple observance. They warn of consequences for misunderstanding, hint at hidden wisdom, and speak to believers who must actively seek enlightenment. The text suggests that salvation is tied not only to faith, but also to understanding and self-awareness. Professor Paula Fredriksen adds, Thomas challenges the notion that early Christian teachings were uniform. It reveals that communities interpreted Jesus' message in diverse ways, and some of these perspectives were intentionally preserved in secrecy. For the viewer, this chapter illuminates why Thomas is so provocative. Some sayings may seem familiar, echoing moral or spiritual guidance found in canonical texts, but others are startling, puzzling, or even unsettling. They hint at knowledge that was once hidden, and at teachings that did not fit neatly into the emerging Orthodox narrative. By examining these sayings, we see how Thomas portrays Jesus not as a figure constrained by a single story, but as a teacher who challenges, provokes, and inspires. The text invites readers to explore spiritual truths for themselves, to question assumptions, and to encounter a side of Jesus' teaching that remained largely obscured for centuries. As we move forward, keep in mind, Thomas is not just a curiosity of history. It is a lens into a world of vibrant theological debate, where questions of knowledge, authority, and personal insight were central, and where the early Christian movement was far more diverse than later Orthodoxy might suggest. As we delve into the Gospel of Thomas, an immediate question arises. How old are these texts, and how do they relate to the canonical Gospels? Scholars have spent decades analyzing language, style, and thematic content to determine the origins and historical significance of these sayings. The manuscript is written in Coptic, but linguistic evidence suggests that many of the sayings were originally composed in Greek, possibly even predating the Gospels of Matthew and Luke. This raises intriguing possibilities. Could some of Thomas's sayings preserve authentic oral traditions of Jesus that circulated independently of the canonical texts? For you, the viewer, imagine holding words that might carry the voice of Jesus as heard by early communities, unfiltered by later editors. That is what makes Thomas both compelling and challenging. Professor James Dunn explains, Thomas preserves sayings that are strikingly similar to canonical material, yet their independent order suggests a parallel tradition rather than a derivative copy. It shows that early Christians were already engaged in interpreting Jesus in multiple ways. The text's unique style emphasizes brevity and reflection rather than narrative. Sayings focus on self-discovery, moral insight, and hidden truths. Some passages are cryptic or paradoxical, prompting readers to engage actively with the meaning. Linguistic analysis and thematic patterns reveal layers of interpretation, hinting at diverse early Christian communities with differing theological priorities. Professor Paula Fredriksen notes, Thomas is a window into the variety of early Christian thought. It challenges the assumption that there was a single, uniform understanding of Jesus' message before orthodoxy was enforced. These findings are reinforced by comparisons with canonical Gospels. While some sayings echo Matthew and Luke, others are unique, revealing alternative perspectives. The text highlights how early followers of Jesus wrestled with his teachings, exploring personal insight and spiritual understanding in ways that the later church hierarchy may have found threatening. For the viewer, this means Thomas is more than a historical curiosity. It provides evidence that early Christianity was not monolithic. It was a vibrant, contested landscape of ideas. The sayings invite reflection on the variety of ways Jesus' teachings were received, transmitted, and interpreted. By studying Thomas alongside the canonical texts, we gain a fuller picture of early Christianity, one where debates about meaning, interpretation, and authority were alive, and where different communities preserved distinct aspects of Jesus' message. As you continue through this video, keep in mind that these insights reveal a dynamic, multifaceted early Christian world, a world where what we now call the canonical Gospels were only one strand among many, and where texts like Thomas offer a glimpse of teachings that might otherwise have been lost to history. The story of the Nag Hammadi library is not only about words written on papyrus. It is also about the extraordinary lengths taken to preserve them for centuries. In the 4th century, as Christianity became increasingly organized under imperial authority, certain interpretations of Jesus' teachings were considered unorthodox. Communities that maintained these alternative texts faced pressure to conform, and many manuscripts were deliberately hidden to protect them from destruction. Imagine the deserts of Upper Egypt, sun-baked cliffs, caves, and isolated monasteries that kept these writings safe for nearly 16 centuries. The jars buried by monks or custodians were more than storage containers. They were vaults safeguarding alternative theological perspectives, ideas that the emerging Orthodox Church deemed too dangerous or disruptive. Professor James Dunn explains, "The deliberate concealment of these manuscripts demonstrates the diversity and contestation within early Christianity. Not all communities accepted the developing orthodoxy, and these texts preserve those dissenting voices. The physical condition of the manuscripts tells its own story. Faded ink, fragile papyrus, and signs of repeated handling indicate that these documents were read, copied, and treasured, even while hidden. Archaeologists and paleographers have been able to date the manuscripts, trace their origins, and infer the communities that preserved them. Professor Paula Fredriksen notes, "The Nag Hammadi texts reveal that early Christian thought was not monolithic. They provide insight into debates over Jesus' message and the nature of salvation that were alive in the first centuries. For you, the viewer, this context transforms the discovery from a simple archaeological find into a vivid narrative of survival, secrecy, and intellectual struggle." These texts were not lost by accident. They were hidden intentionally, offering us a rare glimpse into the beliefs that existed alongside the canonized Gospels. Understanding the archaeological context also illuminates the historical and social pressures of the time. From theological consolidation to censorship, the early church sought uniformity, often at the expense of alternative voices. The Nag Hammadi library shows us a landscape where dissent was preserved in secret, waiting for centuries to be rediscovered. By examining these manuscripts in their physical and historical context, we gain insight into why they mattered then, and why they continue to matter today. They are not curiosities. They are evidence of debates about authority, interpretation, and understanding, central to the formation of early Christian thought. For the viewer, this chapter serves as a bridge between discovery and analysis. It situates the Gospel of Thomas within the lived experience of early communities, highlighting both the risks and the resilience involved in preserving these alternative teachings. The desert kept them safe, but it also reminds us that what survives is a curated window into a much broader, contested early Christian world. The Gospel of Thomas unsettles because it presents Jesus in a radically different light. He is not primarily a storyteller or miracle worker. He is a teacher of hidden knowledge, guiding his followers to discover spiritual truths within themselves. The sayings emphasize personal insight, moral responsibility, and the consequences of failing to perceive the truth. Some passages are straightforward, resembling ethical instructions. Do not be anxious about tomorrow. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Others are cryptic, philosophical, or even unsettling. If they say to you, "Where did you come from?" say, "We came from the light, the place where the light came into being." And some emphasize self-discovery and spiritual responsibility. The kingdom of God is inside you, and it is outside you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known, and you will realize that you are children of the living Father. These sayings contrast sharply with the canonical Gospels. There is no birth narrative, no miracle chronology, no crucifixion story. Instead, Thomas emphasizes personal interpretation, inner enlightenment, and the discovery of hidden knowledge. Its cryptic nature may explain why early authorities viewed it as dangerous or subversive. Professor James Dunn explains, "Thomas presents a Jesus whose teachings are meant to provoke independent thought and spiritual discovery." That emphasis on autonomy could have been seen as a threat by emerging Orthodox authorities. Some passages carry a distinctly Gnostic tone, prioritizing knowledge, Gnosis, over ritual observance. They hint at secret wisdom and warn of consequences for misunderstanding, creating an atmosphere of both intrigue and caution. Professor Paula Fredriksen notes, Thomas challenges the assumption of uniformity in early Christianity. It reveals a diversity of interpretations and the survival of teachings that were considered unconventional by Orthodox standards. For the viewer, this chapter illuminates why Thomas is both compelling and unsettling. Some sayings echo familiar moral teachings, while others point toward hidden truths, secret knowledge, and spiritual responsibilities that the canonical Gospels do not convey. The text provokes reflection and engages the reader in active interpretation. By examining Thomas alongside the canonical texts, we can see early Christianity as a contested and dynamic landscape. Different communities interpreted Jesus' teachings in ways that sometimes complemented each other and sometimes clashed, and the sayings preserved in Thomas offer a rare glimpse into these debates. The Gospel of Thomas is not merely an archaeological curiosity. It reveals a living, intellectual, and spiritual struggle, one that survived through centuries of concealment. It reminds us that early Christianity was not a uniform movement, but a complex network of beliefs and interpretations, each with its own approach to Jesus' message. For the viewer, this chapter sets the stage for understanding how Thomas expands the image of Jesus beyond the familiar narratives, inviting reflection on the diversity, secrecy, and theological experimentation of early Christian communities. The Gospel of Thomas challenges our familiar picture of Jesus. It is not concerned with miracles, birth narratives, or the chronology of events. Instead, it presents Jesus as a teacher of hidden knowledge, emphasizing self-awareness, inner insight, and personal responsibility. These sayings encourage readers to explore spiritual truths actively and to confront the consequences of misunderstanding or neglecting them. For you, the viewer, this means that the image of Jesus expands beyond the familiar canonical narrative. He is simultaneously familiar and enigmatic, comforting and challenging. Some sayings reinforce moral and spiritual principles, while others are cryptic or paradoxical, inviting reflection on hidden realities. Professor James Dunn explains, Thomas preserves a vision of Jesus that emphasizes discovery and understanding over adherence to ritual. It reflects debates and interpretations that were alive in the earliest Christian communities. Professor Paula Fredriksen notes, the significance of these texts lies not in replacing the canonical Gospels, but in revealing the diversity of early Christian thought. They show us a dynamic, contested, and intellectually rich picture of Jesus' teachings. The survival of these manuscripts is remarkable. Buried in the desert, hidden from authorities, and preserved through centuries, they offer a rare glimpse into theological debates that Orthodox channels later suppressed. These texts remind us that the early Christian movement was not monolithic. It was a landscape of differing interpretations, some embraced, some marginalized, all shaping the transmission of Jesus' message. For the viewer, this chapter emphasizes the importance of perspective. The Gospel of Thomas does not diminish the canonical Gospels. It complements them, showing the breadth and depth of early Christian thought. It invites questions. How would our understanding of Jesus change if these sayings had been widely known? How does the emphasis on personal insight alter our perception of his teachings? Ultimately, Thomas demonstrates that the story of Jesus is more complex than a single narrative can convey. It challenges assumptions, provokes thought, and illuminates a richer, more nuanced early Christian world. By engaging with these texts, we gain insight into both the diversity of beliefs and the human struggle to understand the meaning of Jesus' message, a struggle that continues to intrigue, inspire, and challenge us today.